All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today, we're looking at something, most of us kind of take for granted: software reliability. When you open an app or a website and it just works. But behind the scenes, there's like this whole world of engineering dedicated to making sure things run smoothly. And you sent us this really cool article featuring Dave O'Connor, who's been in the reliability game for like 20 years, starting way back at Google when the field was practically being invented.
Yeah, you could say that. Dave's really seen it all. He was there for like a really pivotal moment in how we even think about software infrastructure.
Hmm. So, when I think about software, I mostly picture the features, the design, that kind of stuff. I guess that's just the tip of the iceberg, though, right?
Yeah.
What's this whole reliability thing really all about?
Well, it boils down to making and keeping promises about the software that we build. So think about it this way: speed, availability, consistent performance, all that good stuff. Those aren't just nice to haves, they're really the foundation of trust between a product and the people who use it.
So it's not just building it, but making sure it stays built. I guess kind of like the difference between, I don't know, putting up a house and then also making sure the plumbing and the electricity keep working for years to come.
Exactly. And that gets even trickier when you think about how much software development has changed. We used to treat servers like pets, carefully nurturing each one, but as the number of servers exploded, that just wasn't feasible anymore. We had to shift from pets to cattle, basically, and manage the health of the entire system instead of hyper-focusing on individual servers.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't name 1,000 cows, right?
Right.
It seems like this shift was like a major push behind what we now call reliability engineering, or SRE for short.
It was like a true necessity. Traditional operations teams just couldn't handle that sort of scale. Google, for instance, they were grappling with over 100,000 servers in the early 2000s, just this insane number for the time. That's when they really pioneered the whole SRE role, almost out of desperation, you could say.
Wow. So they basically invent an SRE just to survive their own growth.
Pretty much. And because, like, they're Google, their approach kind of became the model. A lot of other companies look to them. But Dave, he offers a word of caution against just blindly copying what Google did.
That's interesting. Why shouldn't everyone just follow, the Google playbook? It seemed like they practically wrote the book on this, literally.
Well, you have to remember that most companies just don't have Google's scale or resources, or that, build everything yourself mentality that they have. Dave actually says, kind of jokingly, that you should just tear up a copy of the Google SRE book. It's not about dogma or anything. It's more about understanding the core principles and figuring out what actually works in your situation.
Right. So, like, you wouldn't build a skyscraper the same way you'd build a tiny house, even though the basic, like, principles of construction are the same.
Exactly.
So if it's not about just copy Google, what does a successful reliability team actually look like then?
Well, Dave really boils it down to four key promises that any great reliability team kind of makes to an organization.
Okay, I like this promises idea. It makes reliability more concrete, I guess, like something you can actually measure and hold people accountable for.
Right, exactly. It doesn't really matter what you call it: SRE, DevOps, production engineering, any of those buzzwords. These promises are the bedrock of good reliability practices, no matter what.
All right, I'm hooked. What are these four magical promises then?
So the first promise is really all about defining what downtime actually means for your systems, which might sound simpler than it really is.
Yeah, I can see that. Down can be pretty subjective, right? I mean, a minor glitch might not even bother some users, while others might consider it like a major outage.
Yeah, exactly. Dave tells this funny story about that. He was working on Google's network infrastructure, the backbone that keeps everything connected. And he asked one of the senior leaders how the reliability team could actually help them. And the leader just says, "I want to know if the network is good."
Hmm, that's pretty vague. What does good even mean in that context?
Exactly. Like nobody could actually define what good looked like. So that's where the concept of a service level objective, or SLO, comes into play. It's essentially a set of specific, measurable targets. They tell you if a service is working the way it's supposed to.
So instead of like these fuzzy feelings about good or bad, you've got these concrete goals that everyone can agree on.
Precisely. And that shared understanding, it's crucial for making good decisions about reliability. It really takes out the guesswork.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like it's having a blueprint instead of trying to, I don't know, build a house just by eyeballing it. So what's the second promise then?
Right. So this one's called service substrate management, which sounds A bit intimidating, I know, but it essentially means just being an expert in all that complex stuff that underpins your software, like cloud infrastructure and all that.
Ah, okay. Because even though cloud providers try to make it seem easy, it's really not, is it? Like, yeah, they give you all the tools, but you still need to actually know how to use them.
Exactly. There are so many layers of complexity, even with things that seem simple at first. Dave brings up something as basic as identity and access management, or IAM, like who has permission to do what in your systems. Even that can get really, really complex in a cloud environment.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've definitely gotten lost in the weeds with IAM settings before. So a good reliability team needs to have like a deep understanding of that whole infrastructure side of things,
Mm,
whether it's in the cloud or on-premise.
absolutely. They kind of have to be the keepers of the best practices for how the whole infrastructure is used.
Okay, cool. What about promise number 3?
Okay, so this one's a big one. Tech design involvement. Reliability engineers shouldn't be brought in like at the last minute to clean up messes.
Yo.
They need to be part of the design process right from the get-go.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds like it'd prevent a lot of headaches down the line, catching potential problems before they even become problems.
Exactly. And Dave actually has a great example of this. He talks about a time at Google when they were migrating this billing system, and the initial plan involved 12 hours of downtime, which would have been a complete disaster, obviously. But by simply involving the reliability team early on and asking why they were doing things a certain way, they were actually able to redesign the whole migration and complete it with pretty much zero downtime.
Wow, that's a huge difference. Just by asking why, they save themselves from a potential nightmare. I bet that kind of thinking is helpful in all sorts of situations, not just, billing migrations. Okay, so we got 3 promises down. What's the 4th one?
All right, this one might be a little controversial. Tactical heroism.
Heroism.
Yeah.
Like capes and saving people from burning buildings.
Not quite, but it can feel like that sometimes. It's really about having those subject matter experts. The people who can step in and save the day when things go seriously wrong, the ones who can pull a system back from the brink of disaster.
Right? Like a special ops team for software emergencies. Because, yeah, sometimes you just need someone with that deep expertise to come in and put out those fires.
Exactly. And while the goal is obviously to build systems that, don't require constant firefighting, having that tactical expertise available is still crucial.
It's like having a fire extinguisher in your kitchen,
Yeah.
right? You hope you never have to use it, but it's good to know it's there just in case. Okay, cool. So we've got our 4 promises. Defining what down means, managing the infrastructure, getting involved in the design process early on, and having those tactical heroes for when things inevitably go wrong. But what does all this actually mean for someone who, isn't a reliability expert? How can we as software engineers, product managers, or whoever get the most out of working with these folks?
That's a great question. And first of all, I think it's important to remember that not every team that calls themselves SRE or DevOps actually lives up to these promises. Some of them are really just old school operations teams with a fancy new label.
Yeah. Right, so you need to look beyond the buzzwords and see if they're actually, like, walking the walk.
Exactly. And once you've found a team that really embraces those promises, it's crucial to involve them early and often. Don't treat reliability as an afterthought.
No more siloed development, bringing reliability into the conversation from day one.
Exactly. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for help. Even experienced software engineers can benefit from someone who's, seen it all before.
It's like having a mentor who's already navigated all the pitfalls,
Yeah.
right? And can kind of guide you down a safe path. So we've covered the present of reliability engineering, I guess. But what about the future? Are there any trends or predictions we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, Dave actually highlights some really interesting developments in the article. One is the rise of cloud repatriation.
Cloud repatriation. What is that exactly?
It basically means companies are realizing that the cloud, while incredibly powerful, it can also be more complex and expensive than they actually need. So some companies are actually moving their infrastructure back in-house.
So it's like they went all in on the cloud, but now they're starting to realize it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance for your specific needs, not just following the hype.
That makes sense. What else is on the horizon for reliability engineering then?
Well, another trend Dave mentions is companies becoming more, how should I say, opinionated about their reliability needs. They're making more conscious choices about when to build expertise in-house versus buying tools and services.
Okay, yeah. Like deciding whether to, I don't know, bake your own bread or just buy it from the bakery, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it makes sense to do it yourself. Sometimes it's better to rely on someone else's expertise.
Right. And Dave also predicts a shift toward integration. So instead of building everything from scratch, companies will increasingly focus on integrating well-understood technologies and just keeping things as simple as possible.
That sounds like a welcome change. More simplicity, less reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. And ultimately, Dave believes that reliability engineers will become even more crucial in driving that simplicity and creating these really scalable, understandable systems.
So reliability engineering is about more than just keeping the lights on then. It's about shaping the future of software development
Yeah.
and making sure that as our dependence on technology grows, the systems we rely on are robust, resilient, and easy to understand. It's like, I don't know, building the foundation for a digital world that actually works the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great way to put it. It's about making software reliability a core principle, not just an afterthought.
Okay, so we've talked about the four promises of a great reliability team, how to actually work effectively with them, and some of the big trends that are shaping the future of the field. But Dave leaves us with this final kind of thought-provoking question.
Yeah, he asks. Companies will need to become more opinionated about reliability in the future. So what does that actually mean for you and the software you build or use? What choices are you making about reliability? And how will those choices ultimately shape the future of your work?
Those are some great questions to think about. It seems like reliability is no longer just a technical concern, right? It's becoming like a strategic imperative. It's about making these conscious choices that affect the whole life cycle of a product, from design to deployment to long-term maintenance.
Exactly. And as we become even more reliant on software for everything, from communication to transportation to healthcare, the stakes of getting reliability right are only going to get higher.
Hmm. This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. Feels like we've, only scratched the surface of this whole reliability engineering world.
Oh, yeah, it's a deep, deep rabbit hole for sure. But even just understanding those, basic concepts like those four promises, it can really change how you approach software development.
Oh, for sure. For me, I think the big takeaway is that reliability just can't be like an afterthought. It has to be part of the process from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like shifting our mindset from just reacting to failures to actually trying to prevent them in the first place. So, like, instead of waiting for the house to start falling apart, we're thinking about the foundation, the building materials, and making sure it's solid right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like, the role of these reliability engineers, it's only going to become more important as software, well, just becomes even more intertwined with our lives, right?
Absolutely. Think about it right. Self-driving cars, smart homes, healthcare systems. The stakes are just getting higher and higher. We need people who really understand how to build and maintain these systems in a way that's safe, reliable, and can actually scale.
Yeah. It's almost like they're, the guardians of the digital world, making sure it
Yeah.
doesn't like descend into chaos.
Uh-huh. That's a great way to put it. They're the unsung heroes, keeping things running behind the scenes, even when we don't realize it.
Okay, well, folks, it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of reliability engineering. I hope you've gained like a new appreciation for all those people who are keeping our digital lives from falling apart.
And remember, the next time you're seamlessly streaming a movie or sending a message across the globe, take a moment to appreciate that whole world of reliability engineering that made it possible.
And, keep thinking about those questions from Dave O'Connor. How can you be more intentional about reliability in your own work? Because really, the future of software kind of depends on it.
That's right.
All right, that's all for this episode. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.